I thought that Chasing Amy was the one where it's just like, oh, that really.
Yeah, most people kind of point to Chasing Amy as the one where like, oh, they've gotten it, and they also point, but at the same time, Chasing Amy, as much as Chasing Amy is used to praise me, it's also used to like cut me down because people be like, he hasn't made a good movie since Chasing Amy.
Spoiler alerts for the films Clerks, Tusk, Chasing Amy, and Jay and Silent Bob reboot. In the world of YouTube video essays evaluating film, there are three movies that everyone loves to analyze when it comes to the topic of doomed romance, namely Her, 500 Days of Summer, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. These are all phenomenal films that I have poured over time and again. I'm fascinated by movies that don't just depict romantic love, but actually have something to say about it. Romantic love is one of the most important feelings we experience in life, and it's far, far more multifaceted than what the average romantic comedy is able to examine. So I like movies like High Fidelity, Krzysztof Kieslowski's Three Colors trilogy, Alfie, In the Mood for Love, The Graduate, the list goes on and on. Another good one is Tyler Perry's Why Did I Get Married, which is also notable because it has a cameo by yours truly. No, seriously, check it out. But the film that undoubtedly set off my interest in what could be called the insightful romance genre was Chasing Amy, the 1997 classic from slacker auteur Kevin Smith. I was born in 1983, so the lion's share of my childhood happened in the 90s. It was a time of tremendous cynicism. Grunge and alternative rock had taken over popular culture, and with it had come a newfound fascination with the dregs of society. Suddenly, people that would have once been regarded as washouts and also-rans were the newfound kings of cool. There was considerable backlash from the baby boom parents who feared that this sudden shift towards widespread celebration of losers and slackers would have a long-term deleterious effect on the youth. Enter Kevin Smith, whose film Clerks would become one of the most unexpected cult sensations of the decade. In a simple black and white film shot on an almost non-existent budget, Smith demonstrated that the people we dismiss as background players, the video store clerks and gas station attendants of the world, are actually real, interesting, and dynamic characters. They aren't losers, they're fully rounded people trying to figure out life just like the rest of us, and Clerks would argue it's exactly that outsider status that gives them such great insight into the world at large. As the saying goes, the spectator sees more of the sport. Smith would follow up Clerks with Mallrats, a sophomore comedy that was widely regarded as a sophomore slump. At that point, critics were ready to dismiss Kevin Smith as a one-hit wonder director, but little did they realize that he was about to make the mother of all comebacks with Chasing Amy. Simply stated, Chasing Amy tells the story of Holden McNeil, a successful cartoonist who creates the cult sensation underground comic Blunt Man and Chronic, with his collaborator and longtime friend Banky Edwards. Holden and Banky are at a turning point in their lives, confronting the realities of their newfound stardom and the career opportunities rapidly unfurling before them, when Holden meets and falls madly in love with fellow cartoonist Alyssa Jones. Despite his affections, it is quickly revealed that Alyssa is actually gay, and as such, enters into a platonic relationship with Holden. Nevertheless, Holden eventually reveals his true feelings for Alyssa in what, for me, is one of the greatest speeches in cinema history.
I love you.
You love me.
I love you. And not in a friendly way. Although I think we're great friends. And not in a misplaced affection, puppy dog way. Although I'm sure that's what you'll call it. I love you. Very, very simple. Very truly. You are the epitome of everything I have ever looked for in another human being. And I know that you think of me as just a friend, and crossing that line is the furthest thing from an option you would ever consider, but I had to say it. I can't take this anymore. I can't stand next to you without wanting to hold you. I can't look into your eyes without feeling that that longing you only read about in trashy romance novels. I can't talk to you without wanting to express my love for everything you are. And I know this will probably queer our friendship, no pun intended. But I had to say it. So I've never felt this way before.
I won't play the entire speech here, but suffice to say that Alyssa eventually admits that she shares Holden's feelings, and the two enter into a passionate whirlwind relationship. Once Holden and Alyssa join as a couple, their love for one another is undeniable, but ultimately derailed when Holden learns of Alyssa's past. Far from being the gold star lesbian that Holden believed he had converted, she has, in fact, had a very promiscuous history with men throughout her life. Chasing Amy is extraordinary in its ability to provide deep insights on love and relationships, making statements in the course of one scene that other movies take entire scripts to sort through. In the course of a single film, Smith argues that love is not a destination, that it's an ongoing journey that is often treacherous and harrowing even after we find true love, that sometimes a failed relationship is the most important because it's there that we are forced to confront our shortcomings, that sometimes a relationship pushes away longtime friends, and that's okay because we needed to grow apart, that loving someone means realizing that they don't owe us an apology for who they were before the relationship, and that so many of the problems that we have with other people are the result of projecting our own demons and inadequacies onto them. And that's just a few examples. It's a harrowing, fascinating, and ultimately devastating artistic insight into love and relationships. It was with Chasing Amy that Smith demonstrated he could straddle multiple genres and create something altogether new and innovative, a film that combined the abstract silliness of his earlier work with a sense of philosophical depth and emotional maturity that made bold and insightful observations about the nature of love and the human condition. For that reason, it's easy enough to draw a comparison between Chasing Amy and Annie Hall, director Woody Allen's Oscar-winning masterpiece. Both films are unexpectedly deep offerings from directors previously known for screwball comedies. Both have unique perspectives to offer on the nature of love, and both vaulted their respective directors into a new level of critical and public acclaim. The difference between the two filmmakers can be found in what came next. After Chasing Amy, Kevin Smith was in a position to do whatever he wanted. His subsequent output resulted in a number of enjoyable comedies with laughs along the way, but he didn't seem able to fully recapture the magic of Chasing Amy, instead playing up the stoner humor and outlandish sight gags rather than playing to his strengths of writing great dialogue and interesting characters. It was clear that a change of pace was in order, which is why I was initially interested when Kevin Smith announced that he would be making horror films. When I watched Red State, Tusk, and Yoga Hosers, the films that would make up Smith's horror trilogy, I truly felt something die inside of me. The first two films came off as empty exploitation cinema with absolutely none of the life-affirming charm of his previous work, and the latter film just felt like a vehicle for his daughter Harley Quinn. Of the three, it was undoubtedly Tusk which took the longest for me to purge from my soul. Telling the story of a loathsome podcast DJ who travels into the frozen north in pursuit of a compelling feature story, only to end up getting kidnapped and surgically mutilated into a human walrus, the film just felt like an exercise in grotesque depression with thoroughly unlikable characters that are never developed or redeemed, and a protagonist that ends the film stuck in his mutant state, damned to live out his existence as a walrus at a wildlife enclosure when euthanasia would probably have been far more merciful. But more so than all of that, the supposedly scary visuals were not horrifying. Instead, they were just aggressively revolting to the point that I didn't feel scared, just nauseated into submission. As I watched the credits for Tusk roll across my television, I sat in stunned silence, trying hard to believe that this was the same director that had exploded onto the indie scene with Clerks some 2 decades prior. But then something truly unnerving happened. Later in the credits for Tusk is an Easter egg audio of Kevin Smith and his closest cohorts at a roundtable discussion during a podcast laughing uproariously at the idea of Tusk. It was ostensibly this podcast where the idea was initially conceived. At that point, I thought to myself, what part of that was supposed to be funny? There were no punchlines, no jokes, no beats, no build-ups, and no payoffs, just horrible people having horrible things done to them. And that's when it hit me. Kevin Smith does not know how to let go of comedy completely. It's worth noting here that Smith had flirted with the horror genre before when he signed on as executive producer for the rape and revenge thriller Vulgar. While not a Kevin Smith directorial effort, it does feature many of the same players from his recurring stable of actors, as well as a small on-screen part for Smith himself. It falls prey to the same problems: toneless cinematography, flat acting, and a failure to know the difference between being emotionally moved and just being revolted. Also worth skipping. So what happened? To understand that, let's look at what Woody Allen and Kevin Smith delivered as follow-ups to their respective masterpieces. Smith would turn his attention from matters of the heart to matters of the soul with 1999's Dogma, a smart religious satire that would go on to be one of his all-time top-grossing films and help to retain his status as a critical favorite. Still, the film does show the odd moment of strain, with Smith relying on Jay and Silent Bob serving as major players in the story rather than their usual cameos and cutaway gags. It was a trend that would continue with subsequent films like Clerks 2 and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Gone was Smith, the edgy stoner philosopher king of the slacker grunge generation, to be replaced with a decent director who turned in passable comedies that banked on fan service and nostalgia. Smith would try to branch out with Jersey Girl, Cop Out, and Zack and Mary Make a Porno, but none of them seemed to have the same compelling writing, acting, and vision that defined his earlier work. Smith had made a name for himself by taking the flannel and jeans also-rans of the 90s alternaculture and giving them moments of profound insight into the human condition. It seemed like without the 1990s, Smith was culturally disconnected, a state that left him stunted as a relevant filmmaker. But even more frustratingly, it seemed like Smith was unwilling to fully embrace the potential he showed in Chasing Amy. So what to do? Is it possible for Smith to once more return as a serious artist? The answer is most likely yes, but it will take a complete rebranding. For that, let's return our attention to Woody Allen. After the success of Annie Hall, Woody Allen could have easily returned to making crowd-pleasing comedies in the vein of Bananas and Sleeper, my personal favorite of his early work. Instead, he took a hard left turn with 1978's Interiors, a slow-burning cerebral drama about the spiraling relationships in an upper-middle-class WASP family. The film was a complete departure from Allen's comedies and afforded him the opportunity to truly establish himself as a great technical director, a skill that he would showcase to even greater effect in films like Manhattan and Shadow and Fog. Annie Hall is arguably Woody Allen's magnum opus, but it was Interiors that would cement him as an artistic juggernaut and a director's director. It was here that we would first see the hallmarks of his directorial style: the hauntingly stark establishing shots, the dynamic use of light and shadow, and the riveting single-shot monologues often delivered by remarkably deep female characters. It's all these stylistic choices and many more that only evolved in Allen's work when he abandoned comedy altogether and fully applied his talents to hard drama. When Allen would return to comedy with films like Mighty Aphrodite and Broadway Danny Rose, he felt less like a wacky goofball and more like an elder statesman ready to breathe new life into the genre. And Kevin Smith should steal that trick. Kevin Smith needs to start making serious dramas without a hint of comedy to be found, and he needs to make at least 10 of them and not care about how well they perform at the box office. He has profound things to say, he just needs to stop couching those insights in gross-out sight gags and pointless drug humor. Mr. Smith, if you're listening, watch Another Woman, watch Match Point, watch Hannah and Her Sisters. You have it in you to do transcendental drama on this level. Clerks wasn't great because you had a woman make love to a cadaver. It was great because you had penetratingly deep characters that spoke to the viewer on a profoundly personal level. So just give us that, because that's the fan service we really want. Forget about doing comedy. It's a crutch for you at this point. Your original audience has grown up. They're in their 30s, 40s, and 50s now. Speak to them like adults, not maladjusted teenagers. I will also say there's an additional reason Smith needs to do hard dramas that don't recycle his earlier films. He's already horribly bastardizing his best work. In his 2019 buddy comedy Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, Smith revisits the characters from Chasing Amy. Now middle-aged, Holden and Alyssa have reunited in a platonic relationship and are raising a daughter in joint custody. This fails the moral of the original story completely. Chasing Amy is a hard pill to swallow tragedy about finding true love and being too immature to appreciate it. Alyssa Jones is supposed to be the one that got away. The final scenes of the original film confirm that she's going to be this larger-than-life archetypal specter that haunts Holden forever, much like the titular Amy from Silent Bob's monologue. All of that is now gone as a result of Jay and Silent Bob reboot. But there's more to my desire to see Kevin Smith do drama than simply see a great director evolve and re-energize his output. Smith's best works are built around a simple premise, the premise of real people talking to each other. That's something that we're increasingly losing sight of in our modern-day fixation on smartphones and social media. The 80s were about the movers and shakers, the Gordon Geckos and Patrick Batemans of the world that were running our economy ever skyward, what Tom Wolfe would call the masters of the universe. On a less sinister level, it was the Brat Pack taking on the roles of newly minted yuppies making their way in the modern world of business and success. The 90s were about the disaffected common man and woman trying to make sense of the world around them with the help of MTV. The first decade of the 2000s was Sex and the City, the newly revamped world of sexual liberation and social empowerment. What is the modern era about? What is the dialogue that we're having? The simple answer is, we aren't. We seem to be drifting aimless in a void of outrage and protests, but where are the stories about real human connection? Where are the portrayals of friends dialoguing about their hopes and dreams, all while trying to figure out how modern life in its current arrangement is supposed to work? It's simply not there anymore because we've given up on it. We call real life adulting and shrink away from it in horror. The heart and soul of Kevin Smith's work is not mindless stoner humor or gross-out comedy. It's his ability to reveal deep truths about life, love, and the pursuit of happiness in the course of a late-night bowl session over pizza and weed. We need art that revitalizes our love of human interaction and shows us the great joy of solving our problems together, and Kevin Smith is just the director to do that. All he has to do is get rid of the biggest hindrance to his true greatness: comedy. Hey everybody, thank you so much for checking that out. Mr. Smith, if you should see this video, just know that despite everything I said, I am a tremendous fan of your work, and if you ever do decide to make that serious drama, I would be happy to do the soundtrack for a very reasonable rate. Professional musician, 20 plus years of experience. Anyway, as to the rest of you, please comment, like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, share this video with your friends, share it on social media, get it out there, and if you're so inclined, please support the channel on patreon.com/Jtalksart. Thank you very much. I look forward to the next video, and I hope you do as well.